From trackside to roadside and wherever you'd see a sign, Scale Signs has it all. With over 1,400 offerings in N, HO, S, and O scale, Scale Signs has the largest collection of fine scale signs on the planet. Come see the details that bring your models to life on their website, scalesigns.com. Stop. Don't lay another piece of track on your layout until you have a RailFlow track alignment guide from Oak Hill Model Railroad Track Supply. Whether you're forming curves, testing layout fit, or hand laying rail, the RailFlow track guide ensures accuracy and simplicity. Now available in N, HO, and HON3, RailFlow track guides eliminate misalignments and wobbly track lays in both straight and curved track. Order your RailFlow track alignment guide today at ohrtracksupply.com. Are your out-of-the-box industries looking a little plain? Tully Models can help. With a wide variety of industrial and agricultural details and a bunch of new releases, Tully Models is sure to have the super details you need to bring your industries to the next level. Place your order today at tullymodels.com. ATLP Extra is our monthly newsletter delivered right to your inbox each month. Sign up for free at atlpextra.com.
ATLP Rewind.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott. So glad you could join us. It's time once again for Talking Ops with Don Irace. And who else would be on the other side of that than the man himself, Don Irace?
Good evening, everyone.
Good to see you again, my friend. And it's amazing how time flies. It feels like I was just down there, but it's been over a month now since I got down to Florida and finally got to see the Providence and Worcester Railroad in your train shed in Sebastian. That was quite a treat and an awesome experience to be able to see your layout.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. We were glad to have you down there, and it was a good session too. We had plenty of a full house that night.
It's definitely inspired me for a couple things, and I'll tell you this. One is you and I are going to get together and we're going to do another Talking Ops where it's just going to be us, and we're going to talk about some of the things you've done to bulletproof it, because the ops on my side went flawless. I didn't touch the train once. Anything, well, maybe once self-inflicted, but never had to touch it because of anything you did. Just ran so well, and it was a great scheme. I stayed busy. I didn't get walked into. I didn't have to trip over anybody. It was a really enjoyable time. And the weather was good, and we had good food, and yeah, so we had a great time all around. And then come 10 o'clock, John Farrington says, "Come over and see my layout." So I took off and went down the street and saw John Farrington's Somerset and Raritan, I think.
Somerset and Raritan.
Yeah, I got it right. But awesome setup in his home as well. I didn't get to operate that. I probably would have fell asleep trying to do it because it was just a long day. It was a marathon fly down in the morning, hang out with you, run trains, and then fly back the next morning. But a trip well worth it, and certainly appreciate all the hospitality of having me down there. And again, it's going to bring a lot of content to the show because there's a lot of stuff that we can talk about on your layout.
Yep. Yeah, I was glad to have you down there. And that was like the best train trip ever for one day.
Yeah, that's for sure. Quite the marathon, but a blast. And another layout that both of us got to operate on, and this is going back to 2023. Talk about time flying by. I mean, we were just in Texas, weren't we? But it's been now almost 2 years. But one of the awesome layouts that we got to go see was Greg McComas' Michigan Interstate St. Clair subdivision. And we have him with us tonight. So Greg, welcome to Talking Ops with Don Irace.
Good evening. Thank you for having me again. It's been a while.
Hey, Greg, how you doing tonight?
Great. I'm great.
You talk about a while. Yeah, it's been since October 25th, 2022, since I've had you on the podcast. Not that long since I've seen you. We were hanging out at Amherst together and had a blast up there. And saw you the year before that, and boy, we run into each other. But to get you here on the podcast, it's just been way too long. So I'm glad to have you here so we can talk about ops on that layout that you have in your home. Just well, I guess it's considered Fort Worth, Texas, right?
It is Fort Worth, yes. So yes, I'm literally sitting here surrounded, looking around. I'm actually surrounded by it. So it's a great place to be. So
yeah, completely immersed in it, and you get to talk about it and share a bit about the operations there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun operating on there. We were in Texas. We had a good time. Appreciate you having us over.
That week was probably the most model railroading packed. Into I would say 96 hours, because it was like 3 days op sessions in a row, and then right after that, having macrail that Thursday afternoon, we literally ran out the door over to the convention center to get set up that Thursday, because the national train show started Friday morning. So it was really 7 days of nonstop praying. But what a time! Awesome to share the opportunity with so many modelers, of course, in person, and then every day just on the Facebook page. Really making sure everyone has opportunity to see and be a part of the Michigan Interstate.
Good. Go ahead. So why don't you start telling us about your operation over there?
Sure. Okay. So I'll get into it.
On what's going on.
Yeah. Right. So double deck operation. So it's a double deck shelf layout. It's high level. It's in a 13 by 12 office with French doors, no closets, so lots of wall space. It has a helix, so it's 2 levels, and it supports, as y'all know, having a chance to operate on it, snug, but it will support 4 adult operators in there for a 3.5 hour session, running about 15 or so trains. And so there's really an A session, a B session. I used to try to cram it all at once. It's just too much. And so to give staging a break and provide more variety, essentially an A session is the first 12 hours of the day, and then the B session is the next 12 hours of the day. So like during the NMRA week, there was an A session, then a B session, and then the session that Thursday was actually which Michelle was at, and John Parker was actually an A session. So we did kind of go full circle in those 3-day period. But and part of that's to kind of drive some variety. So there's never the same train or the same concept you see every time. It's a little bit different. Just like the prototype.
It was fun. I had a good time. It was nice.
And which one did we run again? We run the A or the B?
Yeah, we were in the morning, I think. We were there.
You guys were in the morning. Yeah, was it the first? Was that the Tuesday or Wednesday?
Hey, that's 2 years ago.
Sure. It was a day that ended in Y. That's what I can remember. How about that?
So, but I think y'all may have been on I think y'all are the first. It was the A session on that Tuesday.
Pretty sure it was a morning session we went to.
Well, I was going to say, if it was an A session, it was an A session. If it was B, I would just say that it was the better session. So, whichever one we had was the better one. But yeah, that was great. And I'll tell you, as an impression I had going into the layout was exactly that. There was 4 of us. It was myself, Don, Mark Herrick, and I believe it was Mike Arnold from England, right? So, yeah, so the 4 of us, and I'm like, I've seen it before because I've gotten a private tour of Macrail World headquarters and in the layout, but I never run it. And I'm like, how are we going to stay? And it worked. And it was that was the most impressive part. Like the 4 of us had plenty to do.
Yes. So in a session, I look at my yard masters guy here. It's kind of a cheat sheet. The yard builds 10 blocks. So merchandise operations alone for, just gathering distribution, you're talking between the 2 sessions, there's 4 inbound line haul freights, there's 4 outbound, there's 3 local turns, a yard job, and a foreign transfer job. So that's just the core merchandise network. And then you start adding in your bulk trains, like the grain trains, the rock trains. Rocks. One train can be a empty rock train this session. The next session, I put the rock in it, live load, and you have a actual rock train, a loaded rock train to move. So yeah, it definitely just adds that variety. You really get immersed because there's so much kind of going on. You get immersed into the alcove you're working in or whatever it is, and you forget you're in this 13 by 12 room.
Yeah, I know. I worked the yard. I think I worked the yard there, and I was busy from the time I got there till the time it was over. It was busy.
And that's fun. Like most, I think you'll hear this from a lot of metal railroaders. That's one of the things I think most layout owners try to work on is how do you provide that relief for the yard master, the yard operator? Because essentially they're busy from the minute they get there till almost they get, to the end, because all too often you have main lines are just too short, right? And so the yard's always trying to keep up. And so that's why, like I said, that's why I split the sessions, is it allowed for that breathing room. The yard still turns over very effectively. If we need to run an extra, we can do that. But it also was designed to take some of that pressure off the yard master and make it more enjoyable in terms of they still got to have a plan. They still have to execute the plan for that day, but not overwhelm and just blow out the railroad with too much traffic.
It was fun. I really enjoyed it. I like being busy. I don't like, when I'm there, I want to run, so it was good. So I don't remember if did you use switch lists or did you have car cards? I don't remember.
Good question. I didn't talk about that. So I do use JMRI operations. I use it live, right? So, while the session was kind of ongoing, I think I had the laptop. I was outside the main room there. And so I was printing y'all manifests, basically live manifests, right? As you were building trains, I'd put on manifests for, okay, this train's ready to go. Okay, here's the manifest. Okay, Mark's going to take it or you're going to take it. Same with arriving trains. And so the inventory was constantly changing during the session. So it's very much dynamic. And it kind of adds almost a fifth job, if you will. I don't call it a traffic manager but really that's kind of a complicated role because you're the layout owner, you're updating the JMRI operations. And I know some layouts have a full traffic manager, which is a really neat role. And there's a lot of dotting the I, crossing the T's type of paperwork to keep the railroad running fluid, just like a prototype, right? There's a lot of paper and reporting that has to be done in the real world to keep railroads moving and customers' freight knowing where it's at all times. So there's some of that element that can be, added in to a railroad.
I mentioned at the top of the show, you had been on the podcast. You talked about how you developed the Michigan Interstate, which is your freelance railroad. Talk a little bit about developing the op session and your operating scheme for the layout.
Yeah. So you really kind of, going back to the core of just like the prototype of railroad, the real question people have to ask themselves is, what does my railroad do? Right? What is the job of the railroad? I think so many times it can be a real ebb and flow. Not really sure what it is, but I think before you can really develop any solid operating plan, you have to know what your railroad is. Just like the prototype, they exist for a reason. They're not there just for the fun of having track. Everything on a railroad costs money. So every switch, every mile of track, every asset. So using those assets attentively and making sure that they're there because they need to be there to service a customer's freight and make money is an important part of that. And so that applies to your mile railroad. So the Michigan Interstate was formed over, as like a class 2 regional, some acquisitions over the time of different lines. But then even if moving beyond that backstory, online traffic, based on the geographic location of mid-Michigan, sugar beet operations, big part of the online traffic feed, cement terminal, grain elevator, a cardboard, fiberboard plant, right, for cardboard. They'll just kind of touch on some of the major industries, those generate the traffic. And even offline, in my west staging, I have basically Midland, Michigan, right? Midland is where a very large Dow chemical plant is. So while there's no actual model industry, that turn that goes to Midland and back from Bay Yard takes a lot of traffic and it creates a lot of demand. So, you have the whole railroad, you have, okay, what's its purpose? Well, in terms of Michigan Interstate's purpose, there's many purposes. Really, it's ag, industrial. It can be one or the other. It depends on your space. I tried to develop a variety based on the prototype industries, contemporary prototype industries that would be rail served in the modern day, right? So it's not, you have honestly, there's no one car customers. Probably the only one car customer, I guess I rephrase that, is the boiler plant that I built online, which was kind of derived from home shops doing that flat car and doing the boilers. I added Kingland boiler or Kingland manufacturing, right? But that type of industry is very much, they build one at a time, and they usually load one specialized rail car at a time. So that is a prototype one car industry because they release a car every couple of weeks because it's specialized build. It's not like it's a big production process like a plastics plant or a transloader. It's a little bit different. So that's the only one car industry. The rest of them are designed to generate demand, right? On spot, off spot cars are actually at the industry, cars are going to the industry. And so that's what allows me to keep an inventory of around 240 cars active for this railroad.
Yeah, it's an amazing number. It's, figuring that the layout is 13 by 12, in a room. Yeah, you've got a lot going on in such a small space, and be able to have that many cars running on it.
Got a few more cars than I have. I mean, my whole layout, I got 165 cars for the whole railroad. You know what I mean?
And truthfully, 240 is really based on the merchandise cars, right? So that's your onesie twosies, your bulk trains would probably make that almost a 300 when you start adding those into the mix. But of those 240 cars, though, only about 80 cars, 80 to 100, it does vary, are actually on the railroad in active service, right? So they're either in staging coming on the railroad, they're on the railroad going to customers, coming from customers, or going to staging. And then the other 160 of those cars are essentially primed in staging because they've either gone off railroad previous session. And so what that allows me to do is rotate that stock of cars. So a train car really only comes on layout if it goes off the staging. It really only comes back about every third session. So, if you have like your local operators, like your Paul Marys of the world, your Dean Ferrises who, operate over here consistently, right? Kind of your normal crew, they don't see the same covered hopper. They see new covered hoppers, right? And so it's just a ebb and flow. And it also gives you me, and as a modeler, it gives me an excuse to have, I want that car. I want that car. It gives you that excuse, right? But that's kind of how I've developed a plan. And then, if you need to thin the herd, sometimes you just have to thin the herd.
Do you feel as though that from week to week to week that your operators, even your normal operators, remember the cars they used the last time they were there, or do you think it's just?
I think on some of the trains. So some of your, what I call like the cycle trains. So the rock train, it's the same rock set of cars, right? It goes online, offline, and same the sugar beet. The sugar beet's a short haul train from staging to the sugar beet mill that carries, the blue cars. So it's that Omaha Power Athearn 5 base. So it's a very visual car. You don't forget that blue hopper, right? And it's full of sugar beets. And so, one session it's bringing sugar beets on the railroad and delivering them. And then the next session that train goes empty. So I think those highly involved trains, because you're doing a very specific purpose, like a unit rock train or a unit sugar beet train, people I think remember those because they're very involved with them. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be like my stone trains, the same thing. It's just two sets of cars, and one goes in full, one comes out empty. And I don't take cars off the layout. My cars stay on layout. I used to do that on my old layout. I gave that up. So basically when the cars get back to the CSX yard, they just basically get turned and they'll come back out on the next session. I'm lucky if I can, out of 165 cars, I can remember the road numbers on 3 of them when I'm doing a switch list, because if not, I got to keep looking to see what the road numbers are, because I can't remember.
And I can actually, that's actually a good question. That's because I really want to make it so you don't remember those cars, right? Because that kind of adds in the rudimentary everydayness of a railroad, right? Oh, that's a cool box car. It's a cool tech covered hopper, but you don't remember. Oh, well, that's ACFX 2462. I had that last time we was here. You want because just like in the prototype, you may catch the same car because maybe it has a graffiti or some sort of really unique identifier. But most of the time, it's like another covered hopper, another box car. So you don't get that. It's kind of like it's like the kind of boring you want to add. In my opinion, I wanted to add because then it's not predictable.
It's like data only cars. You don't have names on the cars that people can remember. A data only car, for somebody to get a photographic memory of what that car number was, it's like it's tough to do.
I think it definitely has to do with conspicuousy, right? When you have perhaps a pink box car, that's going to stand out, or like you said, it's got specific graffiti on the car. It's going to stand out. But yeah, there's some run of the mill cars, but yeah, if you have those special cars like Herrick Grain on mine, that's going to stand out because it's completely different. Yeah, those are the cars that you may want to move off every once in a while and shake it up. But yeah, again, and I think I've said it back when we've had this conversation before, Don. It's really the person that's probably going to remember it the most is the layout owner.
Yeah, because, right. Yeah.
when the operator comes over.
Yep.
But yeah, it's really dealer's choice when it comes to how many cars you want and how much you want to shake them off or not.
Correct. And I think that adds to the believability of your freelance operator. So it's about freelance and not getting that's a whole other animal itself. But to add to that believability of prototype operations, and this is a really believable railroad, you want to have that where only those special cars, they make appearances and they go away, right? They're not every session you're seeing the same, the snowplow or this and that, because I think that kind of can detract from, well, the prototype wouldn't have that every day or every session. So it's just a small enhancement that as you fine tune operations, you can remove that and try to add the mundane, because that's kind of just what you want to have from the prototype.
See, I run 3 cycles. So for one op session, they'll have this set of cars. They won't see that set of cars again for like 3 weeks. You know what I mean? So to me, and I asked them, you remember these cars? No, I don't remember. They're just oblivious to the cars, numbers, and any kind of. I've got some cars with names on them. I remember one car only because I built it and I numbered it, and I know exactly what the number is. And that's probably the car I know the best. But I have some cars from club cars, like from Province Northern, and they've got like Blackstone Valley Grain Corp. It's a blue car, and some of the New England-based cars notice it. Like the New England milling car is red and yellow. It's tough to miss. But coming out every 3 weeks, I think they kind of forget it.
And not to keep drawing us on this specific topic, but there are cars that are going to have, like, when you look at them, you do want your operators based on what you're modeling, right? You talked about, once again, your railroad's purpose. If I have a cement car that's got a Greystone logo on it coming back on the railroad, 99.9% chance that's routing back empty to its home terminal, which is a Greystone cement terminal there with the lake freighter. Or if there's a Michigan Sugar tank car or air slide or pressure aid car, and they're coming back on the railroad, there's a 99.9% chance they're returning home to their business on the railroad that makes money, right? And so those are the kind of cars you want your operators to kind of go, oh, yeah, I'm gonna, that's going to obviously the sugar mill. It's very clear, because that's it's part of the why the railroad exists.
Well, you're talking about those cars and where they're coming to and from, and I know you're a logistics guy. Talk about the process of figuring out all this logistics to build your trains, to build the train symbols and what they do. Because I know how I had to do mine. I joked that I sat on the stairs and stared at my layout for hours upon hours, running trains in my head to try to figure out how to get things to and from. What was that process like for you?
Yeah. So I tell you, a lot of people really just look to the prototype, right? And so what I did is I looked at, okay, I'm a class 2 regional, not a class 1. How do class 2s have their symbols? And so I found some really neat resources back in the day when the IC&E and the DME store existed, even the Wisconsin Southern for that matter. And I just kind of researched them and had good information about how do they have their symbols set up. I guess we call that symbology, if you will. I know, UP has their own style, BNSF has their own style, CP, everyone has their own different styles. And really it was, okay, what's the identity I want to have in my railroad train symbols? And then, okay, from there, define the different types of trains, right? So, and it's changed over the years. I mean, I may have had at one time a high priority train. I'm a regional. Merchandise trains are merchandise train, right? So, I have M trains for merchandise, which are line haul from terminal to terminal. I have locals, which are based they're either based at a location on the railroad and they come to a major terminal, or they originate at a major terminal and they go off to a certain point on the railroad to service a customer and they return. So locals are anchored, if you will, either out and back or backing out. They're anchored to a major terminal. And then road switchers are based online and they never actually touch a major terminal. They are always on the railroad. So it's very much a road switcher because they're on the road and they come on duty at a remote location. So those are the 3 main core symbols, based on looking at the DME and how they did things and stuff. So those are 3 things I kind of decided this I'm going to use as my core for the Michigan Interstate. And then I do have a yard job. So within the yard limits, like at Bay Yard, there is the yard job that actually handles the yard itself. And then there's 3 industries within the yard limits that are handled by the yard job. So those, I guess, those four types of trains kind of make up the backbone of the railroad in terms of the gathering distribution. And then bulk trains, grain trains, other things are just kind of added and ad hoc, right? So they can be kind of sprinkled in based on the demand of the customer, right? Is it grain season? Is it sugar beet campaign season? Is it pothole season in Michigan? And now they're moving rock for, running asphalt, crews all over the summertime. So those kind of trains can kind of ebb and flow and change. But then you have your core framework, which you build your railroad around. And so from there, then you design your, how do you want to do the blocking of the trains? How is it switched in the yards and all those points, right? So it really does require you to kind of think beyond just what you're modeling, especially if you're modeling a portion of a railroad. You have to think about the whole railroad as itself and how does my little section interact with a larger piece.
Yeah, well, that's what I like on mine too. I just looked at a prototype for the locals and they had to change trains and everything. So I basically follow what they did back in the era that I model them in. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I got 2-3 locals. I got interchange trains. The only oddball I have, they didn't have was the paper mill only because I wanted that one big industry on the layout that I could put a guy at and he could just sit there and have all the fun he wants for as long as he wants, So that's but I turned to the prototype for everything on my railroad, really.
Yeah, it's great for inspiration. You really just have to, in the internet age, there's so much information out there that you can really observe that and then emulate it to and really kind of fit it to your railroad. Just like I use this, like the railroad symbols, the stations. Some railroads use three characters. Some use 2. I use 2. It's just it's BAUH. It's Bay City to Upper Huron, right? So it depends on how people do it. Like some locals, like you said, some locals cover a myriad of customers over a certain territory. But then like the sugar turn, the LBAUH, its primary job is getting large blocks of inbound cars to and from to the sugar plant at Upper Huron and then bringing them back home. That is its primary job because that train, when it runs, it looks as big as a merchandise train with Coke cars and sugar beet cars and empties. And so that without having that train run, that kind of feeds the machine, right? It feeds the gathering distribution network at Bay Yard. And so without that, it kind of removes a lot of traffic base. And so it's just dedicated to getting there and getting back versus, spending all day out in the railroad, switching customers and coming back in the evening. It's a real, I'll call it express, but it's very efficient at what it does.
We're going to share some of the images and the items that you had shared with us on our website, aroundthelayout.com/151. And I want to talk a little bit about, because I'm looking at an image now of kind of your track plan, but it's really the blocks. Talk about controlling your layout and being able to essentially dispatch it even without a dispatcher.
Yeah, right. So Michigan Interstate uses direct traffic control, DTC, and that's really pretty neat. I got the idea from Chip Cole. He has a CSX Plymouth sub, so I'll give Chip the credit there in Ohio. And it's been used in the prototype on SP. It's still used on the Alaska Railroad, for example. And it's really neat because essentially the railroad is broken up into blocks. Each of those blocks has a name. And so how we can take that and interpret into the modeling sense is each of these blocks on my railroad has a little occupancy card, right? I think, was it tokens? In the past, like tokens were kind of very similar to this. But essentially that block is on that name, is on that card. And sometimes with the sessions, maybe you have a dispatcher, sometimes you don't. And so it's nice because this allows you to self-help when you operate the Michigan Interstate. If it's maybe just 2 operators, you don't need a dispatcher. You can just self-help. And so you basically, there's a little Velcro on the card. And so if you're going to go occupy a block, so say you're at the yard and you're going to leave the yard and go east and you're going to occupy the next block, you go pull that card from the fascia. Now you have the authority for that block. And so if there was a train opposing you coming west and they want to enter that block, they should first get that card. Well, if the card's gone, they can't enter because there's no authority, right? They can't get their authority. And so that is a really neat way of operating the Michigan Interstate. The biggest part is making sure people pull the blocks.
Yes.
And then, with that, there is signs on the layout in like a fluorescent green, which is very much like the prototype on the Alaska Railroad, where it has that denotes the beginning and the ending of the block. And of course, the fascia card is right there with it, kind of co-located. So it's not like you're getting your card authority from halfway across the layout. It's right there on the territory. And that allows you to kind of have that mother may I, self-dispatching. That really allows for flexibility of operation. So you can operate with one person, two people, even up to four. You can actually operate the whole layout without a dispatcher. It may get a little crazier from trying to make meets, potentially kind of help coordinate that piece, but it is very much possible to run it without a dispatcher. Dispatching is fun because you still use dispatching in addition to the DTC cards. So if anything, the dispatcher just tells you you're going to take A, B, C, and D blocks, and then you go pull them. And that's versus a kind of like a self-help. So it works both ways, and it's a great way to add that interaction to the railroad. And it can kind of slow you down a little bit from, I'm ready to depart the yard and just leave. It does require you to kind of slow down. Do I have authority to be on the railroad? Yes, I have authority. Okay, no, I can proceed. And then when you get to where you're going, you put the card back, of course, and you release the block, especially if as long as your train is, of course, out of that block. If your train is still in that DTC block, well, you can't relieve authority. But once you clear out of it and you're not occupying, then you can release that block and put it back on the fascia where you had got it. And that's another problem is getting folks to put them back. So it's kind of like,
it's like taking car cards home. Right now, you're taking DTC cards.
You go on this kind of this swing. Like I can't get them pull them off the fascia. Then I get them to pull them off the fascia, and they don't put them back.
You ever get them in the mail?
I have not. I have not.
I have.
I do let. Now I will say I do let operators take home their manifests and sometimes the consist cards I just kind of promote as needed. And so like, hey, here's a neat souvenir, from the session. I think you guys had like little timetables as well. I think I had passed out. So just, good, cool little memento you take home with you. Not to mention, if you're out there trying to design your own railroad, well, it's already been done probably. And so you're able to then you can look and go, oh, here's what Greg's done. Okay, I can replicate that. Right. And so it's very much shareable.
When you have a dispatcher, what is the dispatcher's job getting rid of all the cards and everything? In other words, the cards stay on the fascia, but what is the dispatcher actually controlling? How is he controlling the railroad? Only dispatcher control.
Right. So it's still manual. It's very much like it's a dry erase board, right? So I have a piece of plexiglass with the entire railroad laid out on it with all the blocks, and the railroad is laid out in a linear format, right? Because it's an east. If all take away all the things, it is an east-west railroad, so it's linear. And so the dispatcher can visually see everything. They know where I mark where all the trains are, color-coded Sharpie or dry erase markers. And then essentially from there, the dispatcher is talking to the train crews based on their instructions, right? And the train crews know that they should reach out to the dispatcher and talk to them. They say, hey, dispatcher, MBAPH, ready to go here at Bay City. The dispatcher can then kind of plan out, okay, well, I got a train that's going to come against you at Grace Lake. I'm going to have you take the siding. And then so the dispatcher can then go ahead and issue blocks and give them authority all the way to that next passing siding. And actually then give them a authority to take the passing siding, which is actually its own DTC block. So the dispatcher is really involved in that coordinating of trains and then really kind of tracking them as they cross the railroad and holding operators accountable for, did you release that block? Did you release that block? Or did you even get that block? Because sometimes just like people will wander out on the railroad without having authority. And so that really kind of falls to the dispatcher to kind of manage that part of the process.
So if a train pulls into a siding, is that train crew responsible for resetting the switch back to the main, or the next crew coming through take care of the switch?
No, they are responsible for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, so it's all very much manual. They're all pull rods or ground throws, right? So the train themselves are required to line it back how they found it. Yes.
And where's the dispatcher located? Because I don't believe we used the dispatcher when we operated. Where do you place them?
Normally they sit with the desk chair I'm sitting right now. They sit right outside of the office. I have a large wood table I set up for them, like a tray table, if you will, and I put that on there. And they have the train lineup of all the trains and where they go, what they do. So the dispatcher has a idea of they can see over the entire session. Obviously each operator has what they're doing, but the dispatcher sees the entire lineup for the day, like a prototype dispatcher would, and knows, okay, this train, I should be expecting a call from this train, this train, this train. They have that plan. They have their dispatching board, and it's just right outside the office. We have thought about, and actually I say I have thought about actually going remote with that. I've honestly thought about, Don, either sending either you or Ray or both of you, like send you guys copies of the form and let y'all be remote dispatchers. And so kind of adding the next dynamic of having like a radio, like a communication, like your phone, and going from there. One time I was at Speed's house over in Plano, and we were operating his N-scale Texas Namib, and Gordy was dispatching from Scotland. So it's very possible. I know y'all do the remote thing, which is pretty neat. So that's kind of the next evolution of mine. Is it doesn't have to be automated. It can be done even with just sitting there at the kitchen table. I'm sorry, kind of boring probably, but a lot of times prototype railroads, they can't see in these dark territories. They can't see rolling up the train. That's the train's responsibility to call up and basically roll up their authority. And so that there's a lot of prototype in that play, especially for a smaller, like short line or regional.
Well, I used to do that with Ray's. When Ray was running his, I used to dispatch from my house in Florida. It was paper and pencil dispatching, track warrants, stuff like that. And it was good. I mean, he eventually set up a little camera over there so I couldn't see exactly what was going on, but I had at least I could see. It makes you feel like you're part of that group. You know what I mean?
Yeah, give him a railfan cam, but what I did is I muted it so that he couldn't hear us complaining about his dispatching while we were down there. So when the mic wasn't keyed up, he couldn't hear us about. But it was really cool, and it actually dispatches really for my prototype exactly, or for my railroad exactly how the prototype really does it, because they're sitting up in a dispatch center in St. Albans, Vermont. And that's all they have is a piece of paper, and they're writing the trains out, and that's what Don was doing with the sheet. It's actually a copy of the prototype sheet condensed down into something that'll fit on Don's desk. So yeah.
We just got John Farrington's online last night, remote dispatch. It's not a huge layout, but we got it all hooked up last night. I did mocks because we had to change over because Skype is going away in May. So we had to get the team viewer part working with the audio. So we've got both working last night. So got another one. Dispatching's fun either way, by train orders or CTC or whatever you got.
Yeah, for smaller railroads, and I'm sure this would be the same with you. It's evolving one more person without them physically having to be in the room. Right? It gives a little bit more space. It gives, for mine, it works well. And then for us, of course, it allows Don to still be involved being down in Florida, or somebody remote, and get somebody new that may not be able to travel, like for you, to Fort Worth, Texas, but can still be a part of the Michigan Interstate.
Right. Yeah. So that's the next evolution of doing it. And I just kind of, like so many things in our hobby, we talk about it. Oh, it's a great idea. It's a great idea. But you got to take action. At some point, you're like, okay, I need to send this to Ray. I need to send this to Don. And kind of just, you have to kind of step out there and do it, right? Like, oh, okay, let's go for it. It may be it may go down a blaze of glory, but we're going to have fun trying. Yeah. And so that's okay. And because, a lot of times with the traffic management piece, I'm doing the JMRI and keeping up to date and print manifests for the crews. There's plenty to do there for me, let alone worry about a dispatcher. And so, so technically when you kind of break that all down, you could really have 6 people, including the traffic individual, the traffic manager, the dispatcher, remote in person. You could probably take 6 individuals on the small railroad and run very effectively.
One of the hot topic items that it's been going on in the Friends of Around the Layout podcast Facebook group has been, if you're a layout owner, do you participate in ops? So I guess we should ask you that same question. Do you participate in your operations?
If we're shorthanded, I will pull up a throttle. Yes. Most of the time, my focus is during a session when I have guests or regular operator guests is really just keeping the railroad fluid and keeping, for example, my staging is not the easiest to get into. I'm not going to, it wasn't really designed for ops. It was designed for me. It's effective, but I'm not going to pain anyone and put them through the stress of trying to put a train in either the east staging or west staging. So my focus is especially getting those trains in and out, and then probably providing some guidance to the dispatcher, kind of helping them stay kind of like a superintendent role almost. So I can, and sometimes toward the end of the session when things are kind of winding down, I will, but it really depends on really kind of where we are in the session. So, and if we're not done, it's not a big deal because I'll just dog catch it myself, between sessions. The kid and I will get in here with throttles and we'll run the trains and finish it out. So not a big deal. Or if we just leave it as is to the next session and they come on and they find a local that didn't complete, that's cool. We'll just keep on working it. That's like the prototype. Sometimes locals get hung up at derailments, service interruptions, maintenance away, weather, or a customer issue, mechanical, and they don't finish out the same day. So then another crew has to come on and complete that work. So very much a prototype reaction and a response to service the customer.
I'm sure there's a few other layout owners out there that like mine's the same way. We run 3 hours, we go a stretch of 3.5. Sometimes it just, the latter part of the session just doesn't get done. So I just go out there and do it myself.
And truthfully, I actually enjoy as the owner stepping back and watching it go. You put a lot of time and effort into making it come to, you build it, right? You build it not for your enjoyment, but you also build it to share with others, right? And so it's nice to be able to stand back, watch the railroad run. And I guess you call me maybe corporate comm or communications person because I like taking pictures. Very rarely do I get a chance to get the road in action unless I'm staging my own shots by myself. So I get a lot of really neat shots of the railroad when it's in operating by operators that I would never get that permutation of maybe where the trains are and the cars are. That action shot I just wouldn't get if it was just me doing it in sequential order because, well, it's sequential versus I have 3 folks making a meet at the yard in Bay Yard. That's an amazing shot. And so, yeah, I really kind of just enjoy staying back and just watching it all transpire.
That's where me and you differ.
Yeah.
I got to run. I can't sit around. No, I can't do it. I've tried. I just can't do it.
And I think even not to go too on the op session world, but as I will tell you, as a layout owner, I have different jobs and stuff for people and really road crews or yard crew, right? It's kind of what I have on my end. And I've also kind of just learned to appreciate, like when I go to other railroads and operate, I don't care what job I'm given. Like on Dean Ferris's, I was always superintendent. I never ran a train. And like probably the last 2 years at Dean's, I had never run a train. I was just pushing crews and pushing trains and keeping the railroad running and actually kind of letting him have an opportunity to kind of stand back and enjoy his railroad. But I actually enjoyed pushing trains and crews just as much as running a train. And, I go to other layouts. Give me whatever you got. I'm a layout owner. I understand the stress that you go through running the session, sometimes being the owner. And I'm just here to enjoy myself and run trains or do whatever you have. You need someone to clean track? I'll clean track. Give me tracking time. I'll go through and clean track for you. That's fine. And I think that being a layout owner gives you that deeper appreciation for what's being done in a session.
Yeah, I would take any role, operating on anybody's railroad, regardless if it was running a train or not. But you're still a part of the session. You still have a role. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You don't necessarily have to run a train to have a role. So yep. That's. Yep. But on my layout, I'm running the train. So because there's not other roles to have. The dispatch is remote. So we don't have to worry about that. And usually I'm in the yard anyway. So when I get caught up, then I go take my pictures and run around, take the pictures that you see posted of the guys mm-hmm. operating, when Ray was there and everything. So, but I like to be involved.
Watch me straddle a fence with the best of them. I think you're both right. Like, I think what you need is, and I think what you want to do, you want to be able to have that appreciation for what you built and watching other people enjoy it. There's certainly something to really be enjoyed there, but you also want to be able to be a part of that ops that you've built too. So you really want both. You want to be able to do both of them. And maybe one time you don't, just to completely absorb it. Or like Don said, take a job that allows you to take a step back for a few minutes and just kind of observe and see what you've done. And I think it gives you a great sense of pride and a sense of accomplishment when you see your railroad, like you mentioned, Greg, being operated the way you envisioned it, and being able to see those things too. So yeah, I think there's a great balance there. I think there's a balance of, being able to see it, but also don't sit on the sidelines the whole time. Get yourself in there and enjoy the game too.
I think the only exception to the rule for me is if I have a bunch of guest operators, like a convention or something like that, where I got a bunch of new people in there, then I will not operate. Because you got to help people. That's all. So
I think you take all that back to the original ask you had of this in Michigan Interstate is you really want to be able to watch those operators and see them execute that transportation plan, right? Because once again, your railroad exists for a reason. And so seeing operators switching to Michigan Sugar, delivering cars, taking trains off the line, it is that, I think it's that feeling of, you meet the plan, and you're executing to it, but it's also, you're really seeing that railroad come to life like the prototype, because you're trying to operate like the prototype, and your operators are really delivering that freight for the customers and really giving that railroad purpose. And so I think that's probably one of the most exciting pieces, just seeing all that take place and being a part of that. Absolutely.
So a 13 by 12 double deck layout in your spare room of your home, the office of your home. You've got 4 operators in there running this railroad. What's the secret to keeping them busy for 3.5 hours? What is it? What are the elements that you've added to your operating scheme that allow that to happen?
I really think a lot of that comes down to, I kind of trap them in here.
Lock them in. Yeah.
So, the lift out piece, right? Once it kind of locks in, you have to use a chair to kind of get out, or really duck to get out of the room. So a lot of times people are like, I'm in, I just want to keep operating. And really it's trying to have a mix of jobs available. So, right, maybe you run a line haul train, then maybe I give you a bulk train next. And so the goal is to kind of have that next train kind of primed for the operators. So most operators in that 3.5 hour session, they're going to get probably 3, maybe even 4 trains under their belt. So they're going to get a lot of operations, because the paperwork's, for all the trains are already pre-built, the paperwork's printed, the consist cars are there, the train card is there. So all of those stuff is already ready to roll. So it's really a matter of just handing them out to the operators. And of course, the trains that are being built in the yard, once they're built, right, they make cutoff for that move. Then I print the manifest out, and so they depart. So it's really about that prime. I think kind of keeping things primed, and I think that's like, it leads to our question, Ray, where it's like, well, is it almost sometimes being too much primed? Would folks like to take a breather and go hang out, in the quote crew lounge outside for a couple, an hour, and so they're not on their feet for 3 hours straight? It's pretty fast and furious on ours, but that's one of the questions that I've actually been pondering is, do I even have a bigger pool of people and maybe do 2 trains, per session, and give them more time to kind of relax and just fellowship? How many times we have sessions and you want to talk to individuals. It's also a great time to kind of let them fellowship outside of the model railroading room in the crew lounge area and just catch up. And so that's kind of one of the things I've been pondering on my next session here, and probably later this summer, is do I kind of elongate it for the operators and maybe do less work, but still have an enjoyable experience, because once again, they're here, right? They're a part of the session. They're having a good time, but then balancing out the expectation, especially if people are traveling from out of town to come here, they want to operate, right? And so trying to find that happy medium, make sure that people are happy with the time they have on the railroad, but also don't feel overworked. And so that's a balancing act. I'm kind of in that, honestly, just in that brainstorming part of it right now.
What is your frequency of operations? When you operate once a month, every 3 months, every 6 months?
Oh, I would love to operate every quarter, but I will tell you, MacRail does a pretty good job of killing that. So probably on about a twice a year cadence. The railroad, honestly, as it sits right now, is ready to run. It's ready to run from the previous session. So it's always in that kind of state, if you will. So it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of the timing. And a lot of times weekends are very busy with blessed with orders. So or family commitments. So a lot of times it's right now about twice a year. My goal is to get back to every quarter. Small goals, right? Small bites.
Oh, those hobbies within a hobby, and they can definitely do that to you. And I can
Yes,
speak
they
firsthand on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it does take away from it. I will say that much.
I believe
Absolutely.
But they kind of walk hand in hand too, because I'm sure a lot of the things that you've developed through Macrail products has been kind of Michigan Interstate influenced as well, right?
Absolutely. So that all goes back to the genesis of why Macrail existed. That was for removable EOTs. I started developing my own, I think washer one, or like a little wire nut in like February 2020. And then, working through some friends I knew, Marshall here local, we can print something. Well, let's try 3D print. What's that look like? And we kind of did some real basic designs and so, okay, let's keep pushing it. And so come May, June of 2020, the original removable type 1, and I guess, for KD5 and for the regular and scale heads came to fruition. And that's really what Genesis Macrail that summer of 2020 was. I wanted a removable EOT for operations. And so lo and behold, here we are, gosh, almost 5 years, if you can believe it. We're on our version 2. They're amazing sellers. They're all around the world. Very successful product. And we got a lot of other great things in store. So just like PTC, I wanted PTC. There's certain details for the layout I wanted. And all those things, because I have a contemporary modern layout, really kind of genesis and help drive the business, because I guarantee if I want it, there's probably other modelers who want it. And that's really what's kind of been kind of a driving force in terms of, Macrail, philosophy of Macrail, product development. Just like right now, I'm working on those communication towers, which are really close, because a 50-foot comm tower, we have been needing in the hobby for a while. And so I know I've been wanting a couple just for mine, and everyone needs a tower, right, for communications. And so I'm really excited to, once again, the layout inspired the demand, and I'm proud to then take that demand or that opportunity and bring it to the marketplace for customers.
I know. I'm glad you did the EOTs because I got plenty of them. I was glad to get rid of the flasher ones because the only thing they did was take up space. You got a whole car over there that's never going to get used. You'd spend more time printing it by hand. Just, that was the best thing that ever happened.
You bet. Thank you. Appreciate your business.
And you've also incorporated the inheritance of the derail as well. It was a Scott Thornton invention that you have now taken over and produce. And I know Don's got those on his layout. And again, between the removable EOT and those types of things, or the derails or removing flags or doing that kind of stuff is all things that can help really slow down operations and make them last, especially guys like us with smaller layouts.
It adds that play factor. It really adds a whole nother dimension to operating your monitor, especially when you got to stop, flip the derail, like on Fort Mackinac paper, you got to flip the derail, then you got to raise the Lego door right on the actual warehouse, and then you spot the car, and then you got to do that in reverse when you're done with the industry. So yes, that slows down what is a really simple spot and pull. It adds the prototype delay in completing that task. Absolutely.
And on Don's, when I was operating, what was it, PR3, right, Don?
Yes. Yep.
I'd come to Univar and they had gates, and I did it exactly the way the railroad would do, stop and kind of time it to the guy walking to the back, to opening the gate. And it just allows you to completely immerse yourself in the operations, because there's more than just there's the whole, like you said, that play aspect, that acting it all out. Really, those kinds of things really make it super enjoyable.
Yeah, and then we added the portable derails as well. So
yep.
If you don't have you're not set for a permanent one, we got the portable ones now, which you can add and remove very easily. You're once again still stopping to make that movement. And then the wheel chocks, so the facilities that need cars to be kept, whether on a slope or even in a facility where they require wheel chocks before you unload. Now you can add that wheel chock to the car at the industry, or if you're putting cars in a storage siding on an incline or a grade, there you go. We've added that value to you too as well.
Yeah, that was like the perfect product for my sugar plant, because those tracks coming down on a slight grade, because I wanted a difference in height there, and the guys used to use push pins and they used to do everything. Then they come up with those pieces, and I said, "Yeah, send me some of them." And those things work great. They use them all the time. It works out perfect.
That was a fun project. We worked with Chuck from Logic Rail Tech. He actually designed them, and then we kind of partnered up to offer them on the marketplace. So it's, once again, a really neat partnership with another small business in the model railroading sphere to once again add that play value to the hobby.
And I only buy the green EOTs, because when they fall on the black floor, they're easy to find.
Well, they certainly have gotten better. And that's what's nice, a little continuous improvement. As a souvenir, you had sent me an order. I have a bag that says last version 1 EOTs, and it's still in its sealed bag. I haven't it's sitting in a drawer, and I haven't opened them. So I have the last bag of version 1 EOTs, but you've made them better, and you continuously improve. And the installation's been a lot better. My guys, with minimal patience, I would watch them come back to the yard and they throw the EOT on top of the car and bring it in, and the things that operators will do, right? But yeah, no, it's continuously improving, continuously adding products that really help enhance that the operations and slow it down and allow operators again to immerse themselves within what they're doing.
When I see trains come back to the yards without the EOTs, I tell them, "Where's the EOT?" "Oh, I forgot it." Well, so I just nor at them. Now they use it, and I don't have to say nothing to them anymore. Use them. That's why they're there. Use them. Touch a little bit on your flex system.
Yeah. So the flex operations and acronym for it, but that's a neat MRAX presentation. I'm not sure if they're still out there somewhere, but if they are, you can probably still find it. But basically, really the flex stands for, first and foremost, find your railroad's purpose. So you got to have it. 2, you got to learn and labor. So learn how you're going to operate it. Learn your industries, learn how they're served, learn what kind of jobs you want to have on the railroad, and then labor, build something, build a railroad. It's easy to get into analysis paralysis, put it to actual track down, put it to board, right? And build a railroad, have something to operate, execute and evolve, right? So you're going to execute, may not work, evolve the plan. But you can't do that. You cannot evolve unless you execute and have a railroad to actually operate. And then the last piece, once you really get past all your main evolve and execution, cross-examine, right? X for cross-examine, bring others to operate, right? And solicit their feedback. We operate, we're not in a lone wolf operation. We work better, we do well with our relationships in this hobby and our friendships. And so that cross-examination of, hey, you know what, Greg, great session. Here's some feedback I had. Constantly learn, right? But you can't do that without having some cross-examination. And you got to have it when you have other operators and other friends operate on your railroad. So that's my flex for you. And that's kind of what I people ask about building a railroad or all those things. That's the acronym. That's why I stick to and bring that to life.
I like the feedback. I encourage my operators to give feedback, especially I've changed some stuff. We've gone through it. What do you think? You think this is better than last time? You think worse than last time? And it's nothing like getting good feedback from your operators, because they're really doing the job. Because to be honest with you, I don't run my railroad by myself. I tried. I tried a million times. I get an engine out of the engine house. I get it on the train. I'm like, I'm going to go do something else, because I have no enjoyment operating by myself. I just don't. I'd rather have 5 guys in a room and just watch because you're only seeing a certain part of it doing something. The enjoyment is seeing the whole railroad performing the jobs on a daily basis that they normally do.
Mm-hmm.
And everything intermixing with each other and how things work and how things are planned out and how well everything comes together. And you tweak from there. That's how I do it. But my operator feedback is big for me. I really encourage it.
Yeah, I still remember that this is probably one of the most lasting pieces of feedback that really has helped the railroad be successful. First session ever, before we had a first op session, right? You're right. You have sequential operations as yourself, and it's hard to find those bottlenecks because you operate one train at a time. So first operating session, I had Chris Palmieri over and his son, and they operated with me, right? And we quickly figured out that I needed a passing siding in Bay City adjacent to Bay Yard. And Chris gave me that feedback. It's like, hey, we really need a passing siding here because if the yard's gummed up, you can't move. It really becomes a bottleneck. And also, if the yard's full, then you have an extra track to maybe state a train on if you need to get a train out of the way to keep the main line fluid. And so that kind of the execute and evolve stage, right? And kind of cross-examine, you kind of go back to, okay, well, I need to add this piece. And so you labor, you build the staging or the passing siding, and then you execute again and have another session and then evolve from there. So that's like I said, that's kind of how I've operated the Michigan Interstate, and it's been very successful. But yeah, I still remember that early first session. Didn't think I needed I was just gonna put scenery there. He said, no, you need another passing siding. And lo and behold, that passing siding really helps keep the railroad fluid.
I believe it. Yeah. See, I mean, I was in the beginning. We were running trains around. We never could really nail down an order how the trains are going to go out. So it wasn't really working that well. But eventually, with all the feedback from everybody and having everybody there running all these trains in some kind of a scenario, you learn. Well, okay, this guy can't go up before this guy. This guy has to go up before this guy. You know what I mean? And that works. And I swear, that having operators are a big help on any railroad you plan on doing operations on. I swear by that.
Yes.
Like I said, I just can't do it by myself. I just can't.
Well, sometimes you're too close to it. You really need somebody that comes in with a new set of eyes that can really, see it differently. Because we start to assume too. And I think even in writing instructions for jobs, like you really start to learn, how much you really assume that other people don't know. And when you get someone over there to run it and they do it differently or confused or whatever, there's a lot to learn from that opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think that's, it's to the other end of the sword on having people operate. You remove your bias in terms of, well, I designed it, I know everything about this. Now you have someone who doesn't. And then you really have to play on the documentation, communicating to your operators how this plays out and how it needs to operate, right? And so, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to share those in the show notes, but some good examples of documentation for like Michigan Sugar in terms of spotting and pulling cars. Look, how does that work for a crew? And so there's a little card for that. Then there's also a diagram of the actual facility in terms of where cars go, right? And so all those things is making sure your crews know where they are on the railroad. And so they're then able to accomplish the tasks that are expected of them during the operating session. So many times, if documentation is not very clear, you're going to have a chaos.
Well, we will definitely share all of the links in the show notes at aroundthelayout.com/151. And we'll share those images as well. Some pictures of the Michigan Interstate and including the paperwork and the track plan and everything else that we can share. It'll all be on there again, aroundthelayout.com/151. Greg, let's not let it go that long till we get you back on the show again and talk. It was just, going nearly, 3 years or 2.5 years is just way too long. So let's make it sooner.
You got it. Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Don.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's episode, check out past shows, and much more on our website, aroundthelayout.com. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at aroundthelayout.com/crew. Follow us on social media, aroundthelayout.com/social. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us around the layout.